Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Coffee Break Live. I hope everyone's having a great day. Today, we're talking about leveling up. How often do you do it? How often should you do it? How fast is too fast? Um, how slow is too slow? Can you guys hear my audio okay? Someone let me know if you can hear my audio okay. Avery's in the house. How's it going, Avery? Mr. Vincent's here. How's it going? Great to see you, Mr. Vincent. I had a great time at the game last night. John is here. Awesome. It's snow day. So John gets to join us. Let's see. We got Slim Slam. No, Blim Blam. I'm sorry. Blim Blam is here. Loud and clear. Okay, good. Leslie's here. How's it going, Leslie? Audio's good. Awesome. All right. Now, I want to give my 2 cents on this real quick. Leveling up. I tend these days to want to take it slow. I used to take it kind of fast. And I realized that when you skip past the initial levels too fast, you kind of miss out on a little bit of scarcity that makes leveling up more rewarding. And you also just you blow past the lower level stuff and then you get to the higher level stuff and you don't get to actually enjoy the lower level stuff. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but there is a fun element to playing at third level for a little while, right? And then playing at fourth level for a little while. And if you aren't careful, you will just blow past those things and then you will get to higher levels. And then it's almost like, well, we started at level 3, but now we're at level 7 or level 8 where things start to get more wild. So I like to take it slow. Now, here's a question. How slow? Jason's in the house. How's it going, Jason? Blake the Beholder's here. Oh, hey, Blake. I don't think I've seen you on a live before. Jubersten is here. How's it going, Jubersten? Great to see everybody. So here's what I generally like to do. These days, I like to start at level 3. I think the level 3 is a good level to start at. I used to be a solid start at level 1 guy, but that almost feel bad because you can get one shot so easy at level 1 if you fight anything formidable. And so it just seems like a little bit like, okay, these are supposed to be adventurers. They're probably stronger than than 8 hit points, right? With that being said, here's what I generally like to do. Start at level 3, and then I like to go maybe 3 sessions, kind of plan a little arc, like a 3-session arc, have some kind of big combat or in-depth role play to kind of close out that arc. And then we go to level 4. That's the way that I do it right now. Now, with my core group on Saturdays, I level them up. I did level them up by running personal plot arcs and then storyline arcs. And when they accomplish them, they all level up, no matter how many sessions it took. I like that approach, but with my Barrenlands approach, which if you go back in the live videos, you can see episode 1 of the Barrenlands just went live last night. We played live. It was awesome. Super big success. In that campaign, I plan to go, about 3 sessions, level 3, build it into an arc, and then boom, we jump into level 4, maybe play for 3-ish, 4-ish sessions, level 4, jump up to level 5, etc. So I kind of go by arc. John says it was fun to watch. Good. Watching it back, I realized there was quite a bit of dead space. Like, I feel like I took a little too much time thinking and not enough time talking. I think I'm gonna make it snappier next time. But that was just like my own critique of myself. Let's see. Nosotros says, hi, I abandoned all level systems. I'm gonna put this on the screen. Check this out. I just realized I can do this. I abandoned all level system. I decided to use a way to spend XP to advance spells, skills, or even core stats. Proficiency bonus, of course, it's the most expensive dish on the menu. Okay. Blim Blam says, I mainly play Cairn, where there's no leveling up, but plenty of growth. Progress comes through great gear, tools, and emergent gameplay. Special moments that shape the experience. It's great. I like that. I love how I can put this on the screen. This is so cool. I wish I would have known this. I wish I would have known this like 2 weeks ago. Let's see here. In reference to the game last night, John says, almost as if it was a genuine game and not a scripted show with voice actors running the PCs. Fine by me. Okay, hey, that's true. It was genuine. That's for sure. That's for sure. All right, now I want to go to the Discord real quick. And I want to read just a couple of comments, and then we're going to accept some call-ins. So get ready to call in. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and drop the link. Just bear with me for a moment. Where is that call-in link? Here it is. I got to find it. Shabayam. Oh, William says I was reading a script. Well, it sounded like you might have been because it was very well done. You were quick. You were quick on it whenever we got to your turn. A little quicker than I was. Valente was very, very awesome. Call in link. Not only does William do professional voices, William also has awesome lines. And then hot take maybe uses a script. Can I pin this? I gotta pin this. All right. All right. I'm pinning this call-in link, so feel free to click that and join. And then I'm going to start accepting some call-ins after I read these Discord comments. Okay, we had a couple Discord comments here. Number one, this was from Kelf. My only real stance: while milestone leveling might be anticlimactic and unpredictable for players compared to XP, it allows for the DM to curate the experience better by rewarding levels at more dynamic and appropriate times. Now, John Haney came in and said this: in my current 5e game, I make players play at least the amount of sessions at their current level as the level they're trying to get to, 2 sessions to get to level 2, 3 sessions to get to level 3, etc. Also, they need to be at the end of a story arc so as to increase in power. Makes narrative sense. I've had no complaints, and it works pretty well for the kind of game I run. When I finally run a Shadow Dark campaign, I'll probably use the XP system given in the game. It'll probably give roughly the same feel, but actually vary from character to character a bit. I'm excited to try it. I do think XP leveling has a certain kind of magic to it when it's tracked differently. Like each player has their own XP. If you do it really well and you're committed to it, there is a magic to that. I used to be a hardcore XP person, and my characters would literally level up at different times based on their XP, and it was actually really fun. It's kind of a lot of work. DQ Park says, I like the idea of working out an adventure per level. Levels 1 to 3, each adventure could take up to 2 sessions per level. Levels 4 to 8, the adventures get slightly longer. I'd imagine it would take a good GM to pull it off, but as a player facing the BBEG at the end of the adventure, knowing you're going to level up must add tension and excitement, right? Yeah, I agree. And I always kind of plan it out to where they're going to be at max level for that campaign when they meet the BBEG. I try to plan it out to that. That's what DQ Park said. All right. I'm going to bring John Haney onto the stage. Here we got John calling in. Hey, John, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Heck yeah. How's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Heck yeah. So I read your comment over here about your leveling up system, but if you'd like to elaborate, tell us just a little bit more about what you think about this leveling up.
Yeah, so I touched on it a little bit on my Discord comment, but the idea of the narrative playing an important part of it, like I level up, that I make them play at least the amount of sessions, but also it has to make narrative sense. And then I started thinking about it as the live got closer, and I didn't edit the Discord comment, but the idea of narrative and people leveling up, when I think of honestly, you have like Lord of the Rings, right? They start at level 1. They're complete like wimps, and even Aragorn is maybe like level 5, maybe. But they get further and further along. But I started thinking about narrative and leveling up, getting more powerful and leveling up and stuff. And the issue I think that a lot of people do when they level up too quickly, especially with systems like 5e and Pathfinder, where players just get ridiculously overpowered, is that the stories that we love to tell, and this is a story game, right? It's supposed to be a story game. The stories that we love to tell aren't the coolest ever when the characters are just out there kicking butt and taking names. They're the most impactful when the characters are struggling. And you get to a certain level in 5e and Pathfinder 2 and those kinds of systems, you get to a certain level and things just aren't a struggle anymore. Like, you really want to celebrate those lower levels. Like levels 1 through 4 are almost the most fun in that sense, because you have to think through every single move, and you have to do that, and if you slow down the leveling, even as you get into mid-tier gameplay, you slow that down, but you still start to introduce the more powerful opponents and more powerful monsters, you're gonna feel that struggle. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm powerful, I'm level 6, I'm level 8, whatever, but at the same time, this is still difficult because we're starting to face adult dragons. We're starting to face liches. We're starting to face these high tier monsters even though we're only level 8. And so I think slowing down that level progression really increases the narrative in that sense of the struggle is real. And that makes the triumph all the more meaningful, right? If you got to level 20 in 20 sessions and you defeat an adult dragon, okay, no big deal. You were level 20. Your party of level 20s can one shot a dragon basically. But a party of level 10s, that's going to be a fight. So that struggle, that narrative struggle is going to be really impactful, I think, if you slow down the level progression. So that's what kind of what I wanted to add into the discussion.
Nice. Okay. I have a I have a thought about that I thought about that I'd like to add. I think so. Um, I think that the challenge at higher levels is that we start to run into situations where you have to get really creative about how to challenge the players. And I think that you almost have to challenge them differently, because you're right. It comes to a point where obliterating their enemies becomes way less difficult. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like you almost have to find different ways to challenge them. And like, I guess in my
Yeah.
games at epic levels, like I stop it, like, so big dragons, they cease to be like a real problem. Maybe they're like, at a certain point they do become like maybe a fun combat, but the players really steamroll them. So
Yeah.
it's more like, a big homebrew monster with special things, or maybe even a mastermind villain who has an army. And so it's like, well, they can fight monsters, but they also need to help lead this ragtag army against the big organized army. And
Right.
individually, they can't like accomplish as much. And so, but all of that gets to be like, it gets to be really challenging. And I find that it gets harder for players to manage those those characters as they get to those higher levels, and it just all becomes like more work. And I know that some GMs like that kind of work, but some GMs start to be like, and for good reason, I think this starts to make the game feel like a different game. Like levels 1 to 5 is a different kind of game than like 5 to 10. And then beyond 10, it's almost like we have to throw away all the stuff we were doing during our other.
You're gods among mortals by the time you hit level
that's
12.
totally, that's what it becomes. That's what it becomes. Okay, Blake,
Yeah.
you're in here. John, thank you so much for sharing your
Yeah.
thoughts. I'm gonna bounce you out so that Blake can share
Perfect.
his perspectives. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Yep.
Have
Thanks
a
for
good
having me.
one. Thanks for calling in.
Bye.
All right, Blake. What do you think about this leveling up business? What are your thoughts about? I think you're muted. Did I mute you or?
Hang on. Is that better?
There you go. Now we got you.
Okay. John, you had some great ideas. I think those are like really good points as well. And at like higher levels, yeah, it does feel like you're gods among men. And I think that's what actually I'm experiencing in my current campaign. They're about level, I think 11 is what that I left them at. But you have a really good point. When you're early on in the games, you're like, you're fighting little goblins and things, and that is just the challenge at hand. And you don't have to have something insane to actually beat your opponents or beat your players down a little bit. And as you level up, it's like things become easy. And I think there's a time even in my current campaign where I was like I disappointed my players with combat because it felt too easy. And I was like, man, they just like beat like the CR like 17 thing. And I was like, it wasn't even a challenge. But I think one of the things that you have to do in combat to evolve it is, as your players level up, you also have to level up the actual playing field. And by that, I mean like bring in like mechanics to the fights, usually for boss fights and things, but whether it be traps or like special, like let's say crystals on the wall you have to break before you can deal damage, there has to be another piece for the players to overcome, or else it's just too simple in the end game.
Yeah. So okay, so I guess this is a good question. Have you run players up into like near epic levels?
The highest I've ran was, I think, 12.
Oh,
I've
okay,
played
gotcha.
in a level 20 campaign, but that was me playing the game.
I notice that when people are playing 5e, it's very common. It's a very common point to reach level 12. And I've heard a lot of people say beyond level 12, it just gets to be too much of a headache, right? Like, or this, what are your thoughts about that? Do you is that why you say level 12? Is that or are you interested in going beyond level 12?
My players seem extremely interested, so therefore I will give them what they want in that sense. Um, However, I do think it will be quite a task to give them what they want in that sense without having to give them something that's just too simple. Um, Late game stuff, man. I've watched a lot of videos about like past level 12. You're right. It does feel like an epic encounter could be simple. But I guess you got to throw at them the craziest things you have in your arsenal, because sometimes things are too simple at the end game, and you have to overcome those little things. And in my experience, my players love to get beat to the point of almost death and then overcome that challenge.
Nice. Yeah, no, totally. So I also love the lower levels. Like levels 3 to 5 are probably, I think, when it is the most intuitive to create fun, dynamic, challenging encounters. Like that's the sweet spot. I think to myself, oh, this is easy to make it really fun and awesome, is what I like, how it feels. And then beyond that, it starts to just get more challenging. With that being said, I do love the challenge of like higher levels, and there's kind of a fun magic I think that starts to develop once players start to hit like the level like 15 and they start to get like really high. And it does change the dynamics. And I think that as a GM, like I find myself, I went through a phase where I had to let go of a lot of things when I started running players at that level. It's like you have to let go of the idea that any monster is going to kill them or pose even a big challenge, because even if they don't have the raw firepower to deal with it, they have so many utilitarian type abilities that they're probably going to like find a way to sidestep it or get around it or banish it or just plane shift around it or just whatever it is. Or they're going to plane shift it and then dimensional anchor it in like the hells or something and then bounce back like before they take too much damage. I've literally had a player like grapple a creature, plane shift it to the fire plane or something. And they had like resistance to fire, so they could literally only spend like 2 turns there or they would die. And then they like managed to make their checks and like anchor the creature there and like plane shift out again before they died. But they like when they got back, they were almost dead, but they had just killed this huge monster and basically with 2 spells, basically, because they're like a level 18 wizard. So it's like, but
it just becomes crazy.
It does become crazy. But I also think that there is a fun part to that where role play gets so much more important at those levels, because that's like that kind of becomes the currency of the good game. It's not so much the monster is challenging. It's like, oh no, we're stomping everything, but we have these dynamic role plays with like other powerful creatures. Like maybe they're role playing literally with other like godlike beings or something, celestial beings, like big devils or demons who are trying to constantly like make deals or take advantage of them. And so it's like I think that becomes a fun dynamic. It's like being the gang leader or the gang boss type dynamic. And then but playing with that power is a fun thing. So anyway, it does become a different thing. William says, it's a chess game at high levels. I think that's kind of true.
Very true.
All right. Well, Blake, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and for jumping on the show. Absolutely. I'm going to bounce you out of here and make room in case anyone else calls in. But thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to working with you. For those of you, nobody would know this, but Blake and I are working on some video stuff. So I'm very excited for that. So you guys might see Blake on the channel coming up here in the future a little bit. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Blake. Have a great day. All right. Now that call-in link is still pinned, and I'm going to be here for about another 10 minutes. Going to try to keep it a true 30-minute today so I could get some more work done. But I want to go through some of these comments here because there's some really good comments in the chat, and I'd like to discuss them. Okay, so if we go back up to where I left off before, Nosotros said to Jason, I guess I should put Jason's comment up here. Let's put that up here first. I find it sometimes difficult to justify my gained abilities when leveling up. So that is kind of true. It gets a little zany. Okay, so like so this does hurt immersion. Let's say that you're playing this character who's like, I fought in the Great War. I was a wizard. I was a hero, but now I'm trying to rediscover myself again. But like you're a level 1, that doesn't really make sense. That would be like a level 10 character. So when you're starting off at level 1, it's almost like you have to start at the point where you were an NPC and then you barely crested over into like being exceptional. That's like the only way to justify having a level 1 character that makes any kind of sense, unless your character is like suffering from amnesia, which I used to do a lot. I used to do that a lot. But then, so we said, Nasatros says, that's exactly why I switched to a more granular advanced system, not different from basic role playing, as in Call of Cthulhu, Pendragon, or RuneQuest. Mr. Vincent says 3 skirmishes, 4 to 5 room dungeons, and full Stormwreck Isle. A character has been adventuring for 6 months of game time. They are now almost level 5. Okay, so that's how long it takes your characters to level up. I think that sounds good. Let's see here. John said, it's fun to get the new toys at a level up. It is fun. It is really fun. It's fun to get like a new spell, like higher level spells. Let the players enjoy them for a session or 2 before you bump up the difficulty, but then bring it up to a very real struggle before you level up again. I think that's true. I think that's a really good tactic. Avery Juno said, yes, such points on adding puzzles and additional steps to boss fights. I think that was the discussion we were having. I think that was when me and John were talking and basically saying like you kind of have to change the challenges as they level up. And so adding puzzles and additional steps does help to increase those challenges and make them like just it changes the way of the encounters and the way they go, because you kind of have to, because a level 3 encounter is just going to feel totally different than when you're a level 13 or level 14. Dungeons and 20 says, I love 12 and up levels, not so much at low levels. So William, and I play in William's game on Sunday nights, playing Gram, Ezek, Lawful Evil, Minotaur, Bard. William actually likes higher levels, which is, I think, actually a bit unique. I would say the ratio is like 2 to 1. Most GMs favor lower levels to higher levels. William also says, but both have a way different way of play. They do. And then John said, the problem at epic levels is that nothing is challenge anymore. There's an ability or spell to negate pretty much anything the GM can throw at the party. Yes, that's true. It's true. Avery Juno says, the anime protagonists want to struggle and seemingly lose, only to bounce back and overcome. Yeah, that's how it always is. Like I used to watch Bleach, which I've watched like 400 episodes of Bleach. I have not even come close to finishing it, but that's how Bleach always was. It was always like they fight. Ichigo almost dies, or maybe he does die. He's like at the verge of death. Then he unlocks a new ability that is ultra powerful, way more so than his last ultra ability. And that was like the way the show went. And I feel like that's kind of an anime trope. Jason says, I'm part of a Discord West March server. My group is levels 2, 3, 4, and 4. Do you mean that they're at different levels? That might be in reference to when we were talking about using XP to level up. William says, most of my games usually start popping off at level 12 plus. Currently, my more exciting ones are my main 2, which are at level 17 and near the end of the game. That is a very exciting place to be. And wrapping up a game is actually an interesting challenge. We should talk about that one of these times, because bringing a campaign, a long-term campaign, to a satisfying close is actually a big challenge. Jason says, all the baddies are goblins or reskinned to goblins. They are currently at a ruined watchtower on the edge of the swamp. Oh, that was the Discord. That was in reference to this. Group is levels 2, 3, 4, 4. And then all the baddies are goblins or reskinned goblins. They're currently at a ruined watchtower on the edge of the swamp. Okay, gotcha. Mr. Vincent says, not understanding the problem GMs have with high levels. Always bigger fish or schools of big fish. So I can identify why some GMs are not as into the higher levels. And I feel like so here's the thing. It is actually a lot of work, and it's a lot of creative work. And here's what I think it comes down to. I legitimately know that I have run characters through, I should say, being a GM, be GMing at higher levels. I know that I have felt like a lot of pressure at those high levels, and sometimes I felt a little overwhelmed by it. And there were like times like when I was running my very first long-term campaign and the players reached like 18, 19th level, and they were doing so many crazy things. It was like 8 players, sometimes even 10 or 11 players if everyone showed up, and they were like levels 18, 19, and they were doing so many crazy things, and the battles were so massive and the abilities were so massive. I used to just get so nervous before the game, and I would literally stand in my bathroom in front of my mirror before the game, and I'm gonna be real with all of you. I would pound a shot of vodka. I would look myself in the face and I would say, you can do this, you can do this. You just got to think ahead. You got to think ahead, because if I didn't think far enough ahead, they would obliterate everything in front of them and just wipe everything. But if I tried to do too much, if I tried to be too powerful, like make the enemies too powerful or whatever, then it would be feel bad, right? Because they would just get stomped in like an unfair manner. So you want to balance it, but it's a lot of pressure. So that's what I think GMs are talking about. I think they're talking about the pressure they face at the high level, trying to continue to deliver a challenging but balanced game experience. I really think that's what it is. I really think it is. Let's see here. Mr. Cheese Poof. Great to see you, Mr. Cheese. Definitely should do loves at a later time during day. More people be off work and can give more views. Oh, lives. I was thinking about that today. 1 p.m. I just kind of arbitrarily chose it because it's like coffee break time. But I should maybe actually get more serious about doing lives later in the day. I think that's a good idea, actually. Oh, lives. That's what you said. Blake the Beholder says, you mentioned earlier that you start your players at level 3. I do the same unless I have a ton of brand new players. Level 3 feels like the best starting point for veterans for a long-going campaign. Yeah, that's true. It's also true that starting at level 1 for new players could be good because new players then can get the full context. Ryan Williams says, gotta have milestones that allow for those learned abilities to be taught or practiced. I agree. I think that's immersive. I think it's kind of weird if player characters like, if they get abilities, but there's like no context for them. I used to do this thing where if you're going to take a feat, you have to justify how you got that feat or like where you learned it or what you were studying. Like I used to make that a rule. Like even if you were going to get a feat for your character, you have to like justify the feat. If it's one you can pick, not one that's like assigned because of your class, but like, how in 3rd edition, the fighters used to get just like feats for days, like every other level, they were getting a new feat. And I always used to say, a lot of times it made sense. If it's an archer, you're taking the next archery feat. Oh, that makes sense. But what if you randomly take like, expertise in the katana, like an exotic weapon? Okay. That needs to be explained. You have to explain how that's happening. Were you training with a training katana? Like, is that how you got that skill? Like, where'd that come from? Avery says that was in response to Blake's comment about adding crystals on the wall to break or some obstacle for dealing damage to the boss. Oh, gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. Ryan said, should earlier levels feel like a rite of passage for a character? Kind of like survival of the fittest through a test of rolls against stats until magic allows for player freedom? Maybe it should. Garrick, I don't think Garrick is in here today, but Garrick, was it Garrick who's running no, it's not Garrick. It was Bruce from the Discord says that he had everyone create 5 characters and then it was just like a meat grinder, whichever one survived, that's who survives. I think that was Bruce who did that. I think that's such a funny idea. Blake says liquid courage. Sometimes. John Haney says the problem with high levels for me is the bog. A single round of combat takes way too long. It's supposed to be epic, not boring. If I have to wait for 10 or more minutes, I get bored. That's fair. That is another issue with higher levels. It takes so long sometimes, especially if the players are new and they don't understand their abilities. Blake says you have to Eisen. Yes, you have to Eisen. High key. Avery says XP points versus milestone also makes it feel bad to reward the people that are comfortable with RPing their character. Makes it feel like a punishment to be a shy or self-conscious player. Yes, that is true. So here's the thing about XP. I think that XP does have to be equitable in the sense that it can't be based on your skills as a human. It has to be based on what your character is doing. So like let's say your character does some really good role play in game. Okay, like you might role play it out really well, or that might just take the form of rolling very successful persuasion check followed by a very successful intimidation check. Okay, and then it advances the storyline. I think advances the storyline is the main thing there because you're right, not every player wants to do the vocal in-depth role play, and you do penalize the humans who are running characters for not doing that if you treat that as the mechanism. So I always try to treat it as, did you advance the story, or did you get some kind of experience doing that that was exceptional? That's how I try to rationalize it. Hot Dice says the DCC funnel. I'm not actually sure what that is. I don't know. I should maybe Google that. I don't know what that is. Blake the Beholder says I use a timer, 2 minutes per turn. That's not a bad idea. I use egg timers for role play turns sometimes at my core group. Usually I use a 5-minute timer, but for combat, 2 minutes per turn. That's going to make players think faster, and that's a good thing because here's one of the things that bogs down. Here's one of the things that bogs down combat more than anything. It's when a player isn't paying attention to the game, and then their turn comes up and they have not thought about what their character is going to do, and they don't know what the situation is, and then they have to spend most of their turn refreshing their understanding of what's going on, and then reviewing what they could do. And I will admit, as a game master, I find this kind of frustrating. And I will also admit that when I play with players who game like this, I do tend to start taking action to like mitigate this. Like I'll kind of basically try to explain to them, not to do that in a nice way, like, because that does take away from everyone else at the table just because you were like maybe on your phone or not paying attention, which is very much a feel bad. It's a feel bad for the GM, and it's a feel bad for the other players too. And when I'm playing in a game, I always try to show that like respect to the game master. Like, okay, while I'm waiting for my turn, I'm going to literally line out a flow chart of what my turn's going to be. This is especially important at higher levels. And I think that this is important. Hot Dice says, wait a minute. First of all, each player takes in a group of commoners. Is that what DCC funnel means? Maybe that is what that means. Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's where the idea of the level 0 meat grinder comes from. That would make sense. That makes sense. Jason says, of course, the boss comes in during the live stream. What? I don't know what that means. Blim Blam RPG says the DCC funnel is a great idea. Basically, all the players have 4 peasant characters each that try to get through a dungeon. Most will lose 2 to 3 characters. The survivor becomes a hero. Oh, I see. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. That's the DCC funnel. I did not know that. That's really awesome. That's super cool. Let's read one more comment. I give my players 10 times slow-mo, aka 1 minute IRL time per turn. 1 minute IRL time in real life time per turn. Is that during combat, or is that like just for role play, or doesn't it matter? Is it just in general? I'd be interested in hearing about that. But anyway, all right. Well, that's going to be it for this one. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of Coffee Break Live. I really appreciate everyone who tunes in and watches. Thank you so much. I might start doing some lives at night because I think that that'd be really cool. I will say that I do enjoy these afternoon ones, but it's kind of difficult for some people to be involved. So we'll see what happens. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for hanging out with me. I really appreciate all of you. Make sure to roll some D100s for me at your next game, and I will see you awesome people on the next one.